Welcome to episode 213 of In Touch with iOS, the show that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies. I'm your host, Dave Ginsburg. I got two great guests this week. Kelly Guimont is back on the show. I missed you. How you doing, Kelly?
I missed you too. I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, we missed you at Macstock. We'll be talking about that a little bit. We'll kind of fill you in on what some great stuff happened that you'd missed. But you were mentioned a few times, but that's okay. They were good things. And Guy Serle, who I just did see at Macstock this last week, as I'm back on the show. How you doing, Guy?
I'm doing just great. And boy, some of the things I heard about Kelly, my ears were burning.
They were good things. They were good things, but we'll definitely talk about. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about. We'll definitely talk about Macstock a little bit and what I talked about, because it kind of fits into some of the things we talk about here and what others as well. Apple just announced their earnings as we record this, so we'll touch upon that a little bit. And we're still absorbing it, but no, why not? We got the information. We'll talk about it. Lots of other great news and topics as always. Let's go ahead and start things off here with the news of this week. The first one, like I said, is Apple's fiscal third quarter. There was an $83 billion fiscal third quarter. The results are out, and no surprise, iPhone's dominant, as we all know. What a surprise. No. Mac sales were down 10%. iPad sales were down 2%. iPhone was up 3%, and services up 13%. Wearables down 8%. So that kind of sums up as far as where it went. iPad quarter to quarter was just it was a little bit of a drop this time, but I think Tim Cook did say there was a lot of with the supply restraints that there was going on. I think that didn't exactly help things, but iPhone did okay, 3%. For the third quarter, I can't complain about that. But the services,
well, we're in this thing right now where you get into the third quarter of the iPhone cycle and the sales are going to start to drop off because people are already anticipating, the next big thing coming out.
Yeah, that's not a secret. This is almost, this is as close to traditional and or predictable as Apple gets is in the fall, we're getting new hardware to run all the new software we saw in June.
Exactly.
And especially after we get the keynote address that goes out to everybody, you can get it on your own Apple TV now. As soon as we get that says here's what's coming for all the stuff in iOS, at that point, it feels like everybody's just sort of going, cool, I'm going to wait. The only people buying phones right now are people that I have a really old one and I dropped it and I can't replace it with, so I'm going to just get what's out right now because I need a phone.
I dropped it in a log flume ride.
It got caught on the bar when I was trying to get out, and then
that was it.
Yeah, and then and as soon as it popped out, right in the water, I'm done.
I was just happy to get out of the car. That's what it was.
Yeah, that probably was a good thing. So, but
leave the iPhone, take the cannoli.
But Apple's total profit for this quarter was a mere $19.4 billion.
They're doomed.
They're doomed. And year over year changed 2%. And now, as I said, services are just jumping up like crazy, and it continues to. We got a story about services here in just a bit here, but no, great to see. The link in the show notes, of course, is to the fine Jason Snell and Six Colors. He does such a great job of giving us the pie charts, and it makes it so much easier to get an understanding of what Apple announces. So check that out. But no, I think it's decent considering what we're expecting here. So next story: Apple settles AirPods patent dispute with Koss to avoid trial. Apple settled an AirPods-related patent infringement lawsuit with audio manufacturer Koss, according to a court filing that was filed this past Saturday as we record. Koss has accused Apple of infringing on its wireless headphone technology patents with AirPods and Beats products. Koss said that the AirPods and Beats wireless headphones violated a handful of patents related to that technology, and Koss claims to have pioneered. When Koss filed the lawsuit in 2020, the company said that Apple was aware of its patents, and they met on several occasions to discuss them. So they opted not to license Koss's technology, and here we are, and they settled out. There's no details on the summit.
Just went for it anyway.
But Koss is what? I always thought is kind of a second, maybe third level product. That I don't know if they still make products, honestly.
No, they do.
Yeah,
they
it's
do.
it's very very low
wireless,
end, very low end.
Yeah, they have wireless headphones and they have wireless earbuds.
Right.
But honestly, it's again, the only thing that makes this legitimate at all is the fact that Koss actually makes some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, it's really, it's basically you're throwing patents at a wall to see what sticks. And when Google or Apple or one of the big boys actually comes out with something that is vaguely similar to what you have a patent on, then they sue. And Apple and Google and some of the other large companies, they don't necessarily settle because they think that Koss or any of these companies are deserving based on their patents, but it's less hassle and less trouble to just pay them $51 million or however much. I don't think they even
they didn't say it. There was undisclosed.
However much it was, and just say, okay, go away now. We made $19 billion in profits last quarter, so we don't really care. Go away.
What do you think, Kelly?
I mean, basically what Guy said, like the thing that I think is the reason Apple decided to pay it is because Koss makes audio gear. Like they're not patent trolls. This didn't get filed in East Texas, nothing like that. So it seems like this is reasonably legit, especially considering that, it certainly doesn't look good for Apple that like Koss met with them and was like, and presumably that conversation was, we hold all these patents to the things that you are either doing or trying to do. And Apple looked at all that and went,
not
pass.
Really.
Yeah. Or just did the math and went, whatever we have to pay you to make you go away is going to be easier than dealing. It's going to be less than we would pay the lawyers to actually go duke it out in court, and so like on that end, because we don't know anything about the details, of course, then it doesn't, it's from here as a spectator, not a good look.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But you always are hearing these lawsuits and it'll continue on, and Apple is okay, we'll take care of it. And let's move on. So like we will do now as moving on from this story. Next story, For All Mankind prop fused an Apple Newton Message Pad 120 and an iPhone 12. The Apple Newton Message Pad 120 made a surprise cameo in the third season of the Apple TV Plus series For All Mankind, and one of the show's producers had shed some light on how the TV prop was used. Ben McGinnis is a producer at Tulsa Productions and part of the team behind For All Mankind. Shared a behind-the-scenes image. There's a link here in show notes he put on Twitter last week. In the series, the Newton Message Pad was used for video calls between actors. At least one person was also seen handling digital messages. And this is the 1990s. According to McGinnis, the modified Newton had a removable camera for video calls. The actual prop themselves fit an iPhone 12 Pro Max inside them, which allowed the actors to use the front-facing camera for video calls. So the Newton wasn't released in 1993, and we all know about what the Newton did. So I find this to be interesting that they put this in here. Don't you think, Kelly?
I love it. Especially that. I mean, I'm a little sad that somebody took a Newton and hollowed it out. Disemboweled a Newton, which seems
there's not that many of them out there
exactly anymore. Like there's a finite number. In fact, I had one until recently, which I sent it to a farm upstate where it also did not get disemboweled. It is going to go live out its days as a cherished device, and it's just so nice to see that they're still around. Like, as soon as everybody saw that, whether they had one, whether they wanted one, like everybody clocked exactly what that was. And it was kind of interesting to try and, because I remember I saw it and went, is that effects or did they do a thing? Like people will take the classic Mac and put a little iPad, as the display in it. Same idea. I was kind of wondering how they had managed to pull it off. So it was kind of neat to see, but yeah.
Well,
a little
great
sad we didn't get the handwriting recognition in action on the show, but
you sent your Newton up to a farm where it can play with all the other little Newtons there at the farm. I like it.
The Newtons and the E-mates, the cousin E-mates,
Yeah.
Except they have to wallow because they're kind of bigger.
Yeah. The eMate's definitely a waddler.
Yeah. So fun to see Apple props, and especially when it's timeless like the Newton. Next story here, Netflix added a button to its iPhone app that lets you subscribe from its website. Netflix recently added a button on its iPhone app that directs users to its website where they can subscribe to one of its plans. The new button arrived just months after Apple announced that it would allow developers of quote-unquote reader apps to include an in-app link to their website for account creation and management purposes. But now if you load up Netflix's app on the iPhone or the iPad and you're not logged in, you'll see a button that says go into the link of netflix.com/join, where you tap the button and it will present you with a rather lengthy warning prompt. Any accounts or purchases made outside of this app will be managed by the developer Netflix. Your App Store account stores payment methods and related features such as subscription management and refund requests will not be available. Apple is not responsible for the privacy or security of transactions made by this developer. So now Apple has to put a disclaimer. But why are they doing this now? Well, I guess it's a significant change in Netflix, and took some time, but I think Apple is clearly losing this battle, as evidence the fact that Netflix is allowed to actually send its users directly to the website. What do you think?
Well, if that's what people want to do, go ahead.
Well,
is it allowed, or I mean,
I know how
that's the thing. Did they just
happen? Well,
did they just pop it in there, and now that it's getting attention, it's gonna evaporate, or what?
Chances are, apps like big apps like Netflix and some of the other ones that have outside revenue streams beyond dealing with Apple's payment system,
right.
Is going to be scrutinized before they allow the update. So I'm sure Apple already knows about this button, and that, they're just waiting, because eventually what's going to happen is someone is going to do something stupid, and Netflix is going to have their money, or their credit card will be snatched from beyond the grave because of something stupid that Netflix does. And then Apple will say, well, we tried to tell you, but we're not going to help you at all. You have to deal with Netflix bureaucracy, not ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So welcome to the $2 that you saved that cost you however much your credit limit is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, good for Netflix. At least they were able to get around it. So
I'm just waiting to see what happens with this, because I'm wondering if this is going to be one of those favored nation sorts of things where, like, you're not allowed to buy anything in apps from the App Store except Amazon.
Yeah.
Because I can buy stuff on my phone through the Amazon app all the live long. The Kindle app? No. The Audible app? No. Yeah. I can't buy a Kindle app through the Kindle, or a Kindle book through the Kindle app on my phone. But I can buy physical things from Amazon all day long. And, everything else is like, oh, you have to go to our website and get outside of the ecosystem to do the thing. So now that this is slightly more direct, I'm really curious how it's going to play out.
Yeah. This is the start of basically anyone who wants to have a revenue stream outside of Apple's ecosystem, so they don't have to pay Apple's 30%. Is going to be able to do so, but I think Apple is basically going to be completely hands off with it. You can't use your Apple Card. You can't use any part of the Apple ecosystem to pay for this, and you have no protections. You have no options going to Apple for any of this. You lose your money. Don't come crying.
That's a bummer, dude.
Don't cry to us.
Yep, sorry to hear it.
Yeah.
Don't cry to us. So, the next story, and I don't normally use an authority like Android Authority as a news source, but I found this to be a great little topic we could talk about here, and newsworthy enough. Android Auto is so bad, it made me switch back to the iPhone. CarPlay is so much better that it isn't even the competition anymore. And he goes through and talks about that phones have been so versatile, and Apple Android and Apple CarPlay have been go-to options, and he talks about its connection and connectivity woes, and set high expectations. It didn't work, and I went to great lengths to ensure my setup wasn't the issue. And what a surprise! He says the CarPlay does have does the car interface better. Why am I not surprised about that?
No, it's a single manufacturer and operating system versus God knows how many Android phones that are out there, each with their own particular version. So, the fact that that Apple can afford to cross the T's and dot the I's, and these other guys are basically going, "Oh, me too, we do that too,"
right? Just
not as well. I mean, it doesn't really come as a big surprise.
No, and even the Google apps are somehow better on CarPlay as well. What a surprise! I've tried them, and like YouTube Music and others, and I think the CarPlay has always been superior. Any thoughts on this, Kelly?
Not really, because I don't have CarPlay on anything yet. But I do think it's interesting that it's so bad that it made somebody change their entire mobile ecosystem just to get back to it. So I thought that was pretty notable.
It is,
and not to mention it was on an Android fan site that had the story.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to bring this up this week. I thought it was really interesting to see that somebody on Android actually bashed Android on an Android site and said how great CarPlay is. So, and I think we'll all be notable. And I still have to get this phone into my car so I can try CarPlay with the iOS 16. I haven't tried it yet, and I've heard a lot of good things. We've seen a lot of good things. So it continues to evolve here. The last story was about services. Apple now has 860 million. That's million paid subscribers across all services. All services, including Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, Apple News Plus, iCloud, and more. And that was talked about during the earnings call today. And Apple's best analyst expects that the third quarter are posting about an 82.96 billion profit in revenue. And it talks about the sales going up and the wearables and the sales, but the services were 13%. I can think we've continued to talk about this on this show, that services will continue to increase and continue to grow. And Apple sees that this is going to be the next best thing to the iPhone as far as profit center for their products.
This is going to eventually, because the iPhone as a revenue stream, just like the Mac and just like the iPad and just like everything else that Apple sells in hardware, eventually starts to wind its way down, and it just becomes commodity hardware. And especially considering that you can safely use an iPhone for 4 to 5 years before you really have to worry about it becoming, truly obsolete. So if people aren't replacing their iPhone as often, which I think is just around the corner, because it's a testament to just how well Apple makes it. So they'll be looking for what's the next best thing, and it's looking like that's going to be services,
right? Yeah.
That's how they get you, right? Like,
Apple crap.
This is the razor handle, right? And Apple Music, Fitness Plus, TV Plus, those are all the blades,
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So good to hear. And I'm a proud, happy Premier Bundle subscriber, and I've been very happy with it.
Me too.
We split it up with other family members, and they're enjoying the benefits as well. So
I just need to get the Orville over onto Apple TV Plus.
I just watched last night's episode. How crazy I am, and then it's funny you bring that up. I was sitting up doing stuff.
I love the Orville. 10:30
my time, it comes on the air at 11 p.m. Like, I guess I got to stay up and wait and watch it right when it comes on, because it releases
to go
late.
Off on a slight tangent.
Why not?
The Orville. Why not? The Orville this year.
It's
and I've loved this show ever since it came out. Even when it was Starfleet with dick jokes, it was still such a great show. And this year it's become TNG. They're dealing with more deeper topics. And frankly, Seth MacFarlane has not really been a huge part of the show this year.
No,
it's been a lot of the other characters in the show that this has been about. And it's just gotten better and better each year. And I'm hoping and praying, please, 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 let there be a fourth season. I need more Orville. And that has everything to do with iOS.
It does, but we went off on a tangent there, but that's okay. So let's move on to topics this week. As we always talk about on this show is beta iOS 16 beta 4 just got released a day or two ago here. They've seeded out the developer beta, and that's the fourth beta 4, and then the second public beta was also released this week as well. Notably, they're seeing some overhauls to the lock screen, customized wallpapers, all kinds of other fun things. I don't know, are you running anything on beta, Callie? I didn't think you are you?
I am not.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least not right now. Once the public beta is out, I'll probably, or is a little further along.
It's only the second version of that.
Yeah.
So you got
and you know my rule.
Yep.
So
don't do it, please.
Well, I mean, it fits nicely in with Guy's derail from a minute ago, because my rule is the Star Trek movie rule of betas, and you just never bother with the odd numbered ones. You just stick to the even numbered ones, and for the most part, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So Search for Spock wasn't bad.
But Lord, it was not good.
Yeah. So yeah, they did see the TV OS 16 that's out there, iPad OS 16, as well as Watch OS 9. Nothing real notable as far as in the watch goes. A lot of the stuff is just pretty much the updates they have. They're just keep rolling here. We're already end of July, so we can anticipate another month's worth of betas, and probably September time. We're probably looking at another release here very shortly. It was interesting. I found this article. The wait for iOS 16 beta 4 was now the longest since iOS 6. The beta testers waited longer for the fourth developer beta than any new full release since iOS 6 and iOS 7. Because the fourth beta was out. Let's see. It says when it hit, it did not release the fourth beta version until yesterday. So in 2012, 2013, both iOS 6 and iOS 7 were in their third generations for 21 days. So yeah, so this was a little longer, about it was almost 3 or 4 weeks before we had seen between betas here. So always interesting to see that, because I just like when they were having 15.6 beta was still out at the same time as iOS 16. So it's always interesting to see what Apple does when it comes to these beta releases here. So some of the things that you are going to see in here as far as the new things that you see in beta 4 is iMessage, the edit undo sent changes are they've got some enhancements in there. Live Activities has an API now for Activity Kit. New wallpapers in the Home app. I'm rocking the clownfish from the first iPhone. I absolutely love having that on my phone now. I got the copy of it. I'm not even going to switch it for a long time this time. So yeah, there's a lot more stuff, and trust me, once iOS 16 comes out, we'll get more detail as far as what you'll see when that gets released. What they've done as far as in iMessages now, it'll now display original text, and undo sent will be now limited to 2 minutes. So you have 2 minutes to now edit, versus then it becomes permanent. So they did tweak that. So that's what happens in beta. You're going to see that they're tweaking things to see if that something has to change.
The point of beta is feedback on things like that.
Yeah. Exactly. CarPlay, they've expanded some wallpaper options in iOS 16. So they're doing some more.
I was worried about that.
Yeah, that was important to have some more awesome wallpaper on CarPlay.
Yeah.
Not so notable, I should say.
They did it for the guy from Android Authority.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for him.
Exactly.
That's it. Back to CarPlay.
Yeah.
I cannot stand the blackness of Android Auto.
And HomePod OS 16 is in public beta, and then if Jeff was here, he'd probably be cringing. I will not install this on any of my HomePods because they still don't work right. So don't do it, especially HomePods. Yeah, beta's been rocking.
You just go to the screen of your HomePod and change it back. What's the problem?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So, that's beta. Let's move on and let's talk a little bit about Macstock, how things happened this past weekend. We had a blast, and again, Kelly, I'm so sorry we missed you. We were just missing you dearly, and we had a lot of fun. But everybody was asking about you, and Mike Rose was awesome. He was able to fill in such short notice, since as everybody knows, unfortunately, Chuck Joyner did get test positive for COVID, so we were very sad to miss him as well. So it was a little bit of zigging and zagging, but it actually turned out to be a pretty good event, wouldn't you think, Guy? Because you were mastering the controls of the video and making sure we got everything recorded for the digital pass. And
I made sure everything got recorded, and I was doing I was going between cuts and fades. Unfortunately, because of my recent hospital visit, I'm on this blood pressure medicine, and by the time we got to the late afternoon, I'm sitting there watching, and it's had nothing to do with the content of the people that were speaking, but I would be sitting there also, and I would just shake my head. It's like, oh crap, 15 minutes just went by. What the hell?
Yeah, it's a lot of work too.
They'd be like, yeah, and this was actually because for the last couple of Macstocks, I always bring this ridiculous amount of gear that I set up in the lunchroom that I use 3 times the entire time that I'm there. But I'm babysitting it and tweaking it and everything else.
I was watching.
So I miss everything. I miss everything that's related to Macstock. This was the first time in a really long time I actually got to be there when the presentations were going on. And it was wow, there's a lot of good stuff here.
This is awesome.
Yeah. This is great. Why didn't someone tell me about this before? It was a lot of fun, and kudos not to just all the presenters, but to Mike for last minute scrambling.
Oh my gosh, he did great.
Get everything. Yeah, there were no dead spots.
No,
which was great. He had who was was doing the panel thing at the end. What's his name?
Brett Terpstra.
Yes, Brett. Thank you. I'm so bad with names, Karen. So the
God.
Yeah. Well, maybe not Karen. The big thing was make sure that there was lots of good content. Make sure that everyone who was there got something from each speaker, and I think everybody did.
They did. And
the wrap up at the end of the day was wonderful, and it was great. And the deeper dives were good. It was great to see all the speakers come back up onto the stage again, and to take questions from the audience. It was really it was such a good time.
Yeah. Jay Miller did a great presentation. He did. We got to meet.
That was the first time I met him in person.
Me as well. Same thing with Mike Rose. Yeah. Well, no, I met Mike Rose. He was there last time, but then Brett Terps's friend, Erin Dawson was there, and she did a phenomenal job in a presentation about music composition with non-musicians, and her deeper dive was awesome. She went live using Logic Pro, which was great.
Yeah.
Wow. That sounds awesome.
And she did a really good time. And then we did the after stock afterwards. And then Sunday was a little tougher because there was only 2 presenters. It was Mike Schmitz and myself. So, and Mike actually was stepped up, and it was really nice of him. He actually did he combined his presentation for his 20 minutes and his deeper dive in the morning. Yeah. I went ahead and did my thing, and I'm going to talk about some of the stuff I did. And then, so he actually came up with a couple other things as well. And then we kind of threw in, and we needed to fill some time, so we did a Macstock ad hoc where we had a bunch of folks that were in the audience that came up and did a tip or trick and shared something 5 or 10 minutes. Jay Miller emceed it, which was great. He made it so much fun, and then at the end, we did an after stock day 2. We were just Mike Schmitz and myself sitting on stage talking about stuff. But I think a lot of people got some really good engagement. And again, my topic was on managing your media, downloading, streaming, and subscribing. Oh my! And there was that actually Mike made that. I wasn't calling it that, but it kind of was funny. So I stuck with it. But there's just so many things, and I'm gonna kind of split it up here. I want to talk about. I mean, I did it with music, I did it with streaming services, or video streaming services, and I did it with podcast catchers, and everybody was. I had a lot of people come up to me and say that this was just a great topic, and it was really piqued and interested, and they liked the fact, especially streaming services, because people get so confused. There's so many of them out there, and my deeper dive was I went through and had my iPad and just had all the apps on, and I'm probably gonna leave those there in my folder there, and all the apps for the streaming services, and went through a good chunk of them, showing about all the different ones. So it was really kind of a cool thing. So a lot of fun, but I wanted to bring it up here with the show here. Is the fact that podcast catchers, and I like to hear you guys, we've talked about this a number of times, that podcast catchers are just a way of being able to listen to podcasts, and you don't have to use Apple Podcasts, and that was the biggest thing that a lot of people were asking me and do you really have to use it? And oh my God, I can't stand it. And even Mark Potter was saying, I can't wait to hear about this, because I just can't stand using Apple Podcasts. But then we look at our podcast numbers, and everybody uses Apple Podcasts to listen to this show. So, but that's like that, I think, with everybody. So what I did was, and I'm gonna,
a lot of people,
yeah. I mean, in fact, I had someone come up to me during lunchtime, and you were there, guy, and asked, it was Brett Derpshaw's better half, and asking, why would you want to use this podcatcher? And I explained to her, it's just, you have so much more granular control, and Apple Podcasts just does not give that to you.
Much more flexible.
You can't get to the downloads that easily where you can with Pocket Casts and Overcast.
Off the top of my head, the only clear advantage that Apple Podcast has over others, and this is only off the top of my head because I don't know what the Mac equivalent of any of them is it will sync across devices. So if you have an iPhone and a Mac and an iPad where you listen to your podcasts, then if you use Apple Podcasts, it works the way the Kindle app does. You can start on one device, stop on one device, start on another, and it will pick up exactly where you left off, and all of the playing information and I almost called it playment information. Words are hard, dude. All of that stuff all works the same, the same regardless of what device you're on. So you can start listening here, stop, and then start listening over here and stop, and it all just works. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there are Mac equivalents of any of the other apps that I know most people use. I do know some of them will sync across iOS. Like if you have the same thing on your iPad and your phone, that some of those will sync listening positions, but otherwise I don't know. So if you listen to podcasts on your Mac, which I guess is a thing somebody probably does, I don't judge you for it. I just don't know anyone who does.
No, neither do I.
Then if you do, then that might be an advantage to Apple Podcasts for you that other people may not have. Otherwise, I don't know, because the rest of them, like the whole point of it is sort of set it and forget it. Like, this is the one I want to listen to. So now it's going to just show me when new episodes are out. And when I go run or go garden or go do whatever the things are that I do when I'm listening to podcasts, then there are more podcasts waiting for me.
Yeah, I'll touch upon that a little bit. My favorite is Pocket Cast. I keep always saying that at the end of the show, and saying Pocket Cast is such a great app. I like the way it's laid out. I like the way I can sort through all the podcasts, and I even mentioned it. I may subscribe to multiple shows. I could have 70 or 80 subscriptions. It doesn't mean I'm listening to every single one of them, but I like to have the podcasts in the podcatcher, so I can actually go through. It's like, this is interesting. I want to see what there is to listen to on a particular show, and of course you guys are gonna get props. And Mike Rose saw it, that I had the after show with you and Mike prominently displayed on the screen, so he liked that. And I think Jay Miller also liked the fact I had Conduit in there as well. So,
of course.
But that's what's nice about any podcatcher beyond Apple Podcasts, is because you have the flexibility. Pocket Cast does both video and audio, which is great. There is a plus subscription that you can subscribe to it. I think I pay for it's next to nothing just to support them. You get desktop apps when you pay for it, the cloud storage. There's a watch playback. for the Plus app, and it's not terribly expensive. And I think maybe like a couple bucks a year, and it's well worth it. Mm-hmm. It does have standalone playback for the Apple Watch, so if you choose, you want to have your podcast playing. Yeah, that's what Podcatching has added with the Plus. So that's one of the exclusives. Now, of course, Overcast is probably one of the more popular ones as well. Mark Gorman, of course, is the one that was the developer for this app, and it's been around for a long time. It's probably one of the very popular ones, and it does have a lot of good things as far as voice boost and smart speed and easy to organize. The only thing that I'm not a fan of the fact is it doesn't play video podcasts. It only does audio. Now, granted, I understand that a lot of people probably on their iPhone especially are probably only listening to an audio podcast, but
and mostly in their car,
their car too. And that's the other thing too. All of these are CarPlay enabled. And everybody, I did get that question that you have them available in CarPlay, so that's another awesome thing. So
right, but you can't watch the video.
Well, of course not. Yeah, I mean, it would.
I'm waiting for it to get on my watch.
Yeah, they already got the YouTube app on the watch, so
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, there was one. I talked about that a while ago. But so Overcast is another is those that's one of the other top ones. I put in the show notes that the Apple Podcast does Mac and iOS. Pocket Casts is there's an added one for Mac and iOS. Overcast is just iOS. Of course, I believe you can download the iOS version on your Mac. M1, that is. Then there's also Downcast, which is another one that's really totally popular. It was one of my de facto ones, but then Pocket Cast really sold me on what it is. But it does work across all platforms, including Mac. There's a dedicated Mac app, works on the Apple Watch, CarPlay, and all that. And same basic premise. It does a lot of good jobs of organizing your podcasts and making it super easy to do that. This one here which is the one that really caught my eye, and Mike Potter actually reminded me of it because I remember that it is a Mac app. It's called Mimir, Mimir. It's a very powerful podcasts redefined listening experience. Got personalization, simple, elegant playlists. Got automatic silence skip, which is great. Continuous playback. So the Mac app is pretty slick and has a lot of great features in here. Now playing sidebar, continuous playback, automatic silencing skip, tons of things, daily curated lists. But it was only for Mac, and you can get it in the App Store, in the Mac App Store, and I believe it was around $10. Let me see, or they have in-app purchase. It is free with in-app purchase. For the Mac app, but they are beta testing right now the iOS app. So I went on their site. I said, "Oh, look at this! That I can join their beta list." And I thought, I'd probably be waiting for a while. I got an email like right away. So you install, you download it in test flight through that's how you beta test apps. Those of you who don't know that, and I've been testing. So I think this could be a worthy competitor to the ones I just mentioned. As far as that goes, check it out. So, but those are probably the top 5. I mean, there's so many others. I mean, my gosh, and of different sites that curate podcasts, and they have their own apps. But then you get all the big players that are getting involved with podcasting, which includes ones like Spotify, where you can listen to podcasts. This podcast is available on Spotify and many others. Audacity, which is another one that was the CBS Networks, is a lot of where that came from. That company became Audacy. They actually have a cool thing in Audacity that it provides you music channels, so you can actually listen to music, 80s, 90s, and all. It's got curated music channels, and which is really cool. But then you look at Stitcher and Pandora and SiriusXM. No one ever really thinks about SiriusXM being a podcast type of service, but they bought Stitcher. They bought Pandora for music and to extend their AI with music, but they also bought Stitcher. Stitcher was very popular with a lot of music, and music as well as podcasts and all that stuff. Well, really, what SiriusXM did is they moved a lot of the premium podcasts over to their service, and Stitcher really is just a podcast player. And I went and looked at it recently. I hadn't looked at it until I started researching for this, and kind of disappointed what happened to it. But not surprising because SiriusXM, and I talked about with how with music is so important when it comes to with SiriusXM, people don't realize, adding that as a music service, but it's a podcast platform as well as heavy music as for SiriusXM. But I'll talk about music on another episode, but I want to just kind of go through some of the podcast stuff. iHeart Radio is very popular because they're a radio station company. A lot of radio stations around the U.S. and that's what I like about these. And TuneIn Radio is another one that curates it. And I know TuneIn and iHeart have a alliance together, and they share their content.
I like the comedy channels on that. Yeah. It really kind of mixes it up and gives you a wide variety of like different generations of stand-up comedy. And is it all going to be like comedy that I like? Oh, no, not always. But each of them is like 5 minutes long, and then they move on to the next one. And it's a great way. Like if you're on a long car trip, it's a great way to lose a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And radio stations, radio has changed so much, obviously, with the way the internet has gone. I mean, we may remember back in the old days, and we'd always listen to the different radio stations and want to listen to top 40 music and the DJs and the personalities. We all have had our favorite stations.
Now it's all homogenized.
Yeah, there's not too many stations. I do enjoy listening to a news station that I listen to. Not only put me to sleep, but it's nice that some cities have local news stations. I think all our cities where we live didn't have that. So,
but I mean the various music radio stations in each city is now there's no difference. No, you just. No matter what city you're in,
is doing a lot of work in that sense.
Yeah.
Various.
You're hearing the same DJs and the same songs, whatever it is they want to spoon feed you, and it's a big reason why radio is dying, and why podcasts took over, and why now streaming services are kind of eating their lunch, and they have no one but themselves to blame.
Yeah, the personality and stuff behind it, and knowing like. That was what I wanted to do when I was young. Was I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to be a DJ, and I never got the chance to do it. But somehow the part where I get to talk into a microphone is the part that's stuck. I don't know why.
You still do it.
But but that was the thing that I always liked about the radio, was getting to listen to the personalities, and like different people would play different kinds of music too. Like, it would all be top 40, or it would all be rock, or, whatever was within the format. But this person was always going to play, the heavier end of top 40 if it was a top 40 station. And this person was always going to play more of the electronic stuff. And, you kind of always got a nice mix of all of those things. And if that was a DJ that I liked a lot of the stuff that they played, then when they played something new, I would always pay attention because it was probably something I was going to like. And there's not a lot of that sort of discovery happening on the radio anymore. Right. I know, like depending what it was and stuff, like, Nirvana had like come and gotten played to death on the radio and was on its way out where I lived, which was not far from Seattle. By the time the rest of the country went, wait, we like the guy that mumbles with all the guitars. We want that. So we were like, we know. And, some of that stuff is sort of, like a lot of that has evaporated because the discovery of hearing something random on the radio that's new and interesting has vanished because nobody's playing anything new and interesting anymore. Nobody is stopping and looking at that record and going, this has two sides. Let me flip it over and see what, Louie sounds like or whatever, that just doesn't happen anymore.
Not only that, but you had regional radio, like you were talking about, you had the Seattle sound. Then you also had an incredible amount of music that was coming out of Detroit or Cleveland or New York or Atlanta or, any of these large cities that had a large group of musicians that were kind of sculpting their own sound. And as you traveled, you would hear this. And the part of the problem with all of these big conglomerates just snapping up all these radio stations is that's all gone now.
Yeah.
You don't get, everything has come down to well, we want it to sound like the Foo Fighters without it being the Foo Fighters. We want it to sound like Taylor Swift without it being Taylor Swift. Yeah. We want it to sound like this particular country person, but without it being that country person. But it's like if you played, it would be like playing Nickelback and some other band that sounded almost exactly like them, which in the early 2000s, there was about 1 billion of them.
It was all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, it was all of them. And you couldn't tell the difference between any of them because they all had that same sound. And that's something that has been lost with the what's a good word, the commoditizing of radio.
Yeah.
Yep. It's all gone now.
Radio stations have all been commoditized. It's not
even within the same market.
They're all big owned by all big
companies. That used to be against the law. You couldn't have 2 radio stations owned by the same company in the same market. If you owned a TV station, you couldn't own a radio station.
One, and that was it. Yeah,
same market.
Yeah,
that's all thrown out the window now.
Pretty much.
Thank you, FCC.
But you also think you talk about podcasts too. I mean, and one of the things I did mention during
that's right.
During my oh, you're fine. I like that segue.
Rant.
No, good stuff. With the way podcasts have actually gone mainstream, because you're seeing a lot of podcasts have an extension of a show. You know, if you have a show that you watch, it comes to my mind because I really like the show Hacks that was on HBO Max.
Yeah,
it was a great show. They did an extended podcast that talked about the episode for that week. I mean, you and Cal, you know very well because you guys were doing stuff for Ted Lasso, and you'll probably be doing it again when it comes back out.
We were not official, but
you weren't official, right? You weren't official, but there were tons of knockoffs. But you don't have to.
If anyone at Apple is listening, let me tell you how happy we would be to be official.
Pay me a little bit. I'd be happy. We'd have to be official.
We're real close to official because you can get the Ted Lasso podcast at varanisports.co.uk.
That's right.
Because for some reason Apple didn't buy the domain. So Football is Life lives there now. The thing, I mean, like, there's one I'm listening to right now. Like, I don't listen to a ton of podcasts because I don't have a commute. You know, my commute's a flight of stairs. And so, like, I don't have a lot of time to listen to a show. But one of the ones I've started making time for, like you said, is sort of the unofficially official one that goes along with True Blood, because I started watching True Blood again because it's ridiculous and fun. And
sparkly.
It's really fun to listen to. Because it's hosted by two of the actors on the show. And so they're talking about going back through and, you know, because they even said, like, we didn't watch it when it was on the air initially, you know, because we were really busy, like, you know, actually making the show. And it was going to be really weird to watch something that we filmed like a year ago while we're trying to do the scene that we're trying to do, you know, the work we're trying to do now. So they're watching it sort of, you know, they worked on it and stuff, but they're talking about watching it sort of for the first time. And it's a lot of fun to hear those sorts of things. And lots of shows have a companion podcast or the, you know, almost, what's the one that comes on after Picard, the Ready Room?
Ready Room, yeah, exactly.
Like,
I love that show.
Might as well be a podcast.
I love that show.
You know, all the stuff Chris Hardwick does after Walking Dead shows and things like that. Like, all of those sort of feel like companion podcasts for the most part. You know, they're just people that get better access to people to, you know, who actually worked on the show than most of us do when we just go nerd out about it. Yeah. You know,
and that's what you're seeing, mainstream media.
If HBO wants to make Dawn and I official and turn Greetings from the Uncanny Valley into the official Westworld companion podcast, we would love nothing more than to talk to everyone involved with the show. Yeah. Let me tell you right now. But, you know, a thing that always sort of surprises me is how many people there are out there who are interested in that, you know, who want to listen to Dawn and I crack each other up as we talk about Westworld, or, you know, the incomparable show about Ted Lasso, or the flashcasts we did for Game of Thrones and things like that. Like the number of people who want to watch the show and then continue to talk, you know, continue to listen to people talk about it. I just assume they talk back to us as we're having those conversations when I'm recording one, who want to continue to have it. Like I am always sort of surprised that there are people out there who kind of want to listen to me nerd out about what, you know, Wild West sex robots or whatever it is that we're talking about. So I mean, I love doing it because I was going to have that conversation with Dawn anyway,
right.
And the fact that we record it and other people want to listen in is just sort of gravy. So that part is always sort of interesting. But the fact that more and more official, HBO is releasing a podcast for a show and Showtime has an official one for whatever, and
Dexter.
The fact that those things are happening is the part that I think is really surprising.
Yeah.
So like the first time we saw a podcast joke, people were, they did a sketch on SNL about, like, I think it was the Serial podcast or something like that.
Probably.
I mean, it's been years now since they did that, but like the first time they did that was like, oh, like this is a big enough deal that like they're making this joke that not only are they making a joke about a podcast, but they're making a joke on a broadcast television program,
right.
And they're basically presuming everybody's going to get it. Like that to me was really surprising. And then, all the true crime stuff in like Only Murders in the Building, which just sort of crept into the TV show, which is delightful. And if you haven't watched it,
I haven't watched it. I haven't started watching the second season.
Yeah. So
I haven't either because I've had so much other TV to watch because I have podcasts about it.
That's the thing. And I got so much TV I'm watching too.
So much Star Trek.
I think
that's a show that where they start recording a podcast because they're true crime fans and decide they're going to have a podcast of their own. And so like having something kind of that self-referential, was really entertaining. And like when they get to go meet the host of the podcast, all of them are listening to it, everything, like all of those things are just delightful. And, I loved all of it. So the fact that you can get more of them and that more of them are turning out to be official, shouldn't surprise me, but kind of does, I guess. Cause it doesn't seem like, cause it's all of us sitting in our houses, blabbing into the internet. And that doesn't seem like something that HBO and and Hulu and all these places like would want to spend their time on. And yet they are. So obviously there's something in it for them. And that's awesome.
And
I actually prefer the unofficial shows. There's a lot of unofficial Star Trek vlogs,
of course,
that I'm really enjoying. One in particular, and I was just looking for it. The name escapes me. But after every single episode of whatever Star Trek happens to be on, he does a ups and downs, and then he also does this. It's like the certation, whatever the genus is for whales, observations, and he'll find like all of the in-jokes and all of the things that are referenced in other Star Trek shows that are in this Star Trek show. Yeah. The guy that does it, I think he's from the UK, and he's just so good at it. And he's got lots of different cosplay Star Trek uniforms from like when he does one with Lower Decks, he's got the Lower Decks uniform on. When he does one for Discovery, he's got a Discovery uniform on.
Oh my God.
And the thing I really enjoy about it is not so much the ups and downs, because I've seen the episodes by then, and so that's fine. But when he's doing the observations of, he says, okay, well, if you ever saw the Ultimate Vulcan in the animated series, you'll see that there's a Mr. Spock huge skeleton still wearing the Starfleet uniform that's hooked to the ceiling above this collector's, and it's just little things like that as you're watching the show, you may not see, but this guy goes to the trouble of probably watching it 10, 20, 30 times so that he can find all the little references that are in there. And it's just brilliant. And he's not official. This isn't,
that's what's great about
Will Wheaton in the Ready Room. This is just some guys, and and they've got, YouTube money, but it's just some guys having a good time with it, and it's really, really great.
All right, let's go ahead and move on from the podcast. We've I want to get a few more topics in here before we wrap up, but I do have links in the show notes for all the podcast apps that are out there that we talked about, so check that out. And I think it's a great thing. I'm glad that we had this discussion. I found this article. I wanted to talk a little about what you guys think about this. Is the the fact of the matter that this was in ZDNet, Apple politely explains why iPhone cases are a waste of money. Do you really need to? Do you use one? Does anybody use one? Do you trust yourself? And he's having the debate. Should you have a case on your phone? And it's interesting to see that anytime you see any Apple exec, they have their iPhones and they don't have any cases on them at all. I mean, that's including any Apple cases. And I found this to be interesting to know the debate whether or not do you really need to have an iPhone have a case on it. I mean, iPhone 13 has a ceramic shield. It's tougher smartphone glass, and he says, relax, it's Apple, it's an iPhone. So I don't know. I've always had a case on my iPhone. I don't know what you think, but I think I think this is a kind of a crazy debate. But I wanted to think, Kelly, I was interested to hear what you think, because I know you use a lot of cases.
I do. I handle way more cases than the average human being does, right. And honestly, I've gotten a lot better about it, but I always used to label myself a dropper kicker thrower. So my phone would fly out of my hands on the regular. The problem is, okay, look, here's the deal. Have I ever seen an Apple exec wrap their phone in a case? No. Is it going to be any inconvenience to an Apple exec to fork out another $1,000 for a new phone if they drop theirs on the stone floor in my kitchen? Yeah. No. So when I start making Apple executive money, my phone will probably be naked too. Until then, my phone has to last an undefined amount of time, because I don't get one every year. I don't turn them in on the lease program or anything like that. And depending on the situation at my house, my phone either goes to a family member when I get a new one, or becomes the drawer phone. And so, it's a phone that I need to keep in case there's an emergency, In fact, right now, the count in the drawer is 0, because the phone that used to live in there was my iPhone that my father-in-law is now using, because his sort of swallowed its own tongue and he couldn't use it anymore. So I had to give him mine until he can get something new. And, because he has that advantage, he's one of the people who's contributing to the statistic of poor iPhone sales that we talked about at the top of the show. Because he's waiting until there's a 14 that he can, go get his hands on instead.
Right.
And so I use cases, I use clear cases, but most of the time I have a case with a purpose. That's clear. This one, for example. Yeah, this one. My awesome Smartish case with the cool grips on the sides that I love, high Smartish cases, inexpensive and MagSafe. So I have this so that the MagSafe stuff just works better on my phone. I have used cases with kickstands. I have a case that I use on the off chance I ever get to travel again. I have a case that I can put cards in the back of, so I can put my, because my phone is either in my hand or in my pocket 100% of the time. And then I don't have to carry around a bunch of other stuff. So I can put my hotel card key and my Visa and my license in the back of my phone. And I have everything I need if I'm leaving for somewhere. And that's super convenient. So having a case on my phone, I usually do for a reason, but generally one of those reasons is the stone tile floor in a big portion of my house.
I just couldn't do it.
And outside stuff is hard, y'all. Yeah. So Concrete, if I drop my sidewalks. Phone on the driveway, on the sidewalk, on the road, it's probably not going to end well. No. And that's why. And it's not because I need the metal to be pristine or anything like that. I'm not a person who's like, oh, there's a nick in my phone and now it's, eternally damaged and I have brought shame upon my family name or whatever. Yeah. No. But at the same time, I take it out once in a while and wipe off the outside and clean out clean pocket lint out of the case and all that kind of stuff. And I hold it in my hand and I go, ooh. And then I think about if I drop this in the kitchen, I'm screwed. Yeah. And I put it back in the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
because the case is not the thing that makes it not fit in my pocket. Let me just put that on the record because you knew we were going to get there.
That's right.
Guy, that's not why it doesn't fit in my pocket.
Guy, would you have your iPhone without a case on it? I think we've got a consensus here. But.
No, I don't think I would. I mean, this is a case that I got
from me.
Yeah. I don't even remember who makes it. I don't know if you can see that
Spec.
logo.
Spec.
That's a spec case. Yeah.
I gave that to you.
And it's a good case. I mean, the only thing is when I do Guy's Daily Drive, I have to take it out of the case because the
bracket.
Yeah, it doesn't fit really well. The bracket that I have in my car while I record live video while driving, because that's a smart idea. So, but I do keep mine in the case. Yeah, but the question is, a professional what?
Hold that thought.
No one's really sure.
So I think the consensus here is I think this guy is a little crazy. I thought it was an interesting article. Wanted to hear a short debate to see if anybody here would not have a case on. I couldn't go without a case. I've had a case on my iPhone since the first iPhone. Honestly, forever.
Yeah.
I would not.
I mean, I've had them without. I did the bumper for a while on the 4s.
Yeah, the 4.
Because it wasn't the front and the back. I was more worried
gate.
about it was, dropping it and hitting a corner and munching the screen, which is still the problem that I'm worried about. And, it's a, stone tile. If my house was 100% carpet, then I would probably think twice because I spend way more time here than I do anywhere else. And so it would be a different conversation. But otherwise, no, it needs a case. And, like I said, mine are specific. So for MagSafe or for, one of the nice things about the MagSafe case is I can attach a MagSafe battery to the back if I want to. I've had them, with, like I said, with a kickstand, which was a super duper handy case that I really liked. There's a lot of reasons why you should get why you could get a case that would extend functionality in some way, make it stand vertically for you, or, it's easy to attach a battery or to use a battery depending on the case, and, things like that make it just more useful. So
yeah, absolutely. Yep. So I'd like to hear listeners what their thoughts are. If you would go without a case, send me an email, feedback@intouchwithios.com, and tell us would you go without a case? Would you let your iPhone be naked? Because I sure wouldn't be. I want to protect it and keep it.
You need
safe.
Andrew for this topic because Andrew's an iPhone nudist.
Yes, I know he is. I've asked
he lives life on the edge with that because he puts the beta on it the minute the beta is available. It doesn't have a case. He just It's like
Warren and Andrew. They're together
He's
when
just
it comes
tempting
to
fate.
Tempting that kind of fate. Warren is a case fiend. He has lots of cases. I know that for a fact. So
I'm somehow that does not surprise me.
Doesn't surprise me either. Along with his MacBook Air, he got and had all the other 8 computers he's had in the last 5 months. But that's a whole nother story.
I don't have a ton of cases, but the minute Sanrio makes a Hello Kitty case with a MagSafe ring on the back, I am doomed and powerless to resist it and totally getting one. So
absolutely. So, all right. Well, looks like we've come to a close to another great show. So glad to have you both here this week. And let's go ahead and wrap up for this week. That's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. Tell us all about the case. Would you like to have a case on your iPhone? You can follow us on Twitter @InTouchWithIOS. Support the show by buying me a coffee at intouchwithios.com/coffee. We would really appreciate it. And I'd like to give a shout out to Pat. I had my first Patreon subscriber. I really appreciate it. We had a Patreon subscriber come in this week, so thank you. And I know you were in the chat room last week, so thanks. Shout out to Pat. And the way you can become a Patreon is you can support the show by going to patreon.com/intouchwithios. We have 2 tiers available to support the show. Please go out there and support it. We'd really appreciate it. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to you're notified to when we do a live stream, which usually is on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, on our YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/intouchwithios, where you can watch and listen to the past shows as well as watch this live stream. You can watch back. I leave them all live here and recorded, I should say. Visit In Touch with iOS magazine on Flipboard, where many of the topics we talked about are discussed. We will flip into that magazine. The link is in our show notes. And you can subscribe in your favorite podcatcher, as we talked about today, including Pocket Casts. Okay, you can use Apple Podcasts, but I think a lot of you do anyway. But many others, as we mentioned. So, but better yet, go to our website, intouchwithios.com, where all the links to all the ways to listen to us are there. I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter at DaveG65. Kelly Guimont, so glad you were able to make it. We missed you so at Macstock, but I'm so glad you made it here this week. And where can people find you?
Generally you can find me in front of my computer editing a podcast, because right now, I want my MCU TV over at the Incomparable Network. I'm still trying to get the episodes edited and out the door. The Westworld podcast I mentioned earlier, Greetings from the Uncanny Valley, is also over at the Incomparable Network. And you can listen to Don Melton and I discuss Wild West sex robots and have crazy theories about what's going to happen to them next. You can, if Mike and I can ever get our schedules together, then you can hear Mike and I on the after show with Mike and Kelly.
We talked about it.
Sometimes you can find me here. When I have an available Tuesday evening, you can find me on Mac Voices Live with Chuck once Chuck's back at it. And I think that might be all. Yeah, maybe that's all.
Great.
Yeah. And the rest of the time, you can find me on Twitter as Verso.
Awesome. Thanks again. Guy Serle, it was great to see you in person. We had a lot of great dinners. A couple of days at Macstock. It was a lot of good company. And
I dragged all my gear down for you. Were the only one that got to see it.
I only got to see it, and I was in the Dave Hamilton suite at the Hampton Inn. So
that was such a nice room.
Yeah,
you paid less for that suite than I paid for my regular.
I know.
Room.
Thank you, Dave Hamilton, for giving his room.
I am not at all bitter.
No, not at all.
I'm not bitter.
No, not at all.
But
you can tell.
Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me. Email address is guy@mymac.com. You can find me on the Twitters. I am either VertShark or Mac Parrot, depending on my personality at the time. You can also find me over on the Tubes of You. I am VertShark over there, and you can see not live, but pre-recorded versions of Gaz and me on the My Mac podcast, as well as Guy's Daily Drive. And both of those shows are also available over there in the iTunes. You can find them all right there. And we have a Skype telephone number that absolutely nobody calls. It is 1 or +1 outside of the United States, 703-436-9501. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for being here, Guy. And thank you for listening. We really enjoyed doing the show, and we had a great time, and we really appreciate that you listened to the show. And we'll talk again soon.